The constant battle is something I took out. And this is, I think we need to describe a little bit more. So basically, when the animals took over the farm, they were led by the pigs, because the pigs were the most intelligent and they were deemed to be the sort of
upper class.
The upper class, even though
intelligentsia,
even though, as we'll hear a little bit shortly, that all animals are equal. But
some are more equal than others.
But the pigs are able to take the mantle in this case and be the leaders. So there was, when this happened, they took over, and there was a mission to then build a mill to sort of provide sustenance and food and everything for the community of the farm. And there's a constant battle to try and finish the mill, and the mill is the most important thing in the world. And eventually the mill does get completed, but then we find that they shortly after moved on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And
it's a common goal that they're all pushing towards in the future. This will give us prosperity. This will take us to we can live this idyllic life once this mill's done. But we've got to work hard until then. Yeah,
I think it was, the quote is, and thereafter he declared so much labour would be saved that the animals would only need to work 3 days a week.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me was that, the almost manifesto of what we're about and the rules that were written on the side of the barn and the philosophy of the society is kind of seen as written on stone tablets almost, That's the way it's kind of communicated. It's like, this is the rules of our society and this is how we're going to get prosperity in that. But as time goes on, those constantly creep and change, and people can't remember what it was at the start, but they still feel like these are the rules we've always had, I guess. And that is interesting and leads into our previous book, The Black Swan, around how you view the past and that sort of thing. And so I found that really interesting, and how much of the narrative, a narrative from the state or someone in a position of power, can be massaged as time goes along.
Mm. And how forgetful the masses or the crowd is.
Yeah, and you see it in countries, religions, organisations, companies, sporting groups, whatever. Like,
classic example was one of the core values of Google. We will do no evil.
Don't be evil.
Don't be evil.
Took it out.
It's gone. Shouldn't say that.
Yeah, they might not link us in their results.
Yeah.
So that's constantly changing. That's just humans.
Yeah.
But we always feel like it's the same as it has been.
But it's interesting because what actually happens in the book is there's 7 commandments at the start, isn't there? And that's set down at this initial battle to overthrow the human.
Yeah, when to take, old Major was alive or what have
you. Yeah. And these 7 commandments, they sound like, 7 fairly virtuous commandments for all the animals within the society. But then we see as the overthrow happens and as the book progresses, they sort of evolve and things are slightly tweaked and changed depending on the events that happen and take place. So much so that you've gone from 7 commandments at the start, which eventually, and one of them being all animals are equal. That was the 7th of the 7 commandments. And by the end of the book, there's one final reflection or one final look at the mural of, where the 7 commandments used to be or where they thought they used to be. And all it says now is all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. I was going to say that on that sort of, I think what you're getting to is that sort of forgetfulness of the crowd.
Right? Yeah, that's a much better way to put it. I like that.
And not just forgetfulness, but the blindness of the crowd. So this is like the collective bias of the crowd, not being able to see what's going on behind them, and how quickly we forget things.
And when you've got you're living your daily life, you kind of don't notice it.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're totally focused in on, what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow, or what was happening yesterday. And some of us look a little bit further each way, depending on our demeanor. But there's not many of us that are looking 5, 10, 20 years ahead, and not many of us looking 5, 10, 20 years behind. And there's certainly, or more, and there's certainly not many that are doing both.
Yeah.
And we quickly forget, which is, where you see sort of economic crisis happen and conservative regulation results, and then all of a sudden it's loosened, or things are forgotten, and it all happens over again.
Yeah.
It's just that sort of forgetful nature of society at large, because it is driven by the society at large. And so if people aren't focused on that which impacted it previously, because it's been too long between it, because there's a select few of experts that actually know what's happening and what's been going on.
In your life, you're kind of programmed to be always looking for what's going to hurt you. And that even the modern world now is really governed by that in many ways. So the example was you go to a nightclub, right? They put bouncers on the doors because they're threatening. They're big people that can hurt you. So it's going to kind of stop you doing bad things. The police carry guns around and are trained, and it's the fact that they could hurt you that means that you're constantly triggering that in your brain, and it stops you doing certain things. The army, like you go to Europe, they walk around the train stations with machine guns. It's totally foreign to what's here. Or even at work, someone who's just bigger than you probably are physically. We've all had that being in the construction industry, that thought of, hey, this person could kill me if they wanted to, that sort of feeling actually governs a lot of decision making.
It's an innate feeling.
Yeah, and that's throughout this book too, the threat of violence, whether it's from an external party that's used to, say, snowball, so the fact he might be coming back is used as a motivator, and that's a fear of violence or death, but it's also from the pigs who are in power that they can hurt you or what have you as well. Basically, the book's about how debt came about and the nature of money, and one of the main, he kind of mentions that in the book, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And also kind of the way that debt traps you in, or the light at the end, that basically, let's take modern society at the moment. In Australia, what you're supposed to do is get a house, right? But you have to borrow 8 to 10 plus times your wage to do that. So you're actually just imprisoning yourself to the state, because then you need to work, and that work is good for the economy and good for the community, but you pay taxes, and some might say that they get unevenly distributed, the benefits from those, to certain portions of the population. But the point is that by doing that societal norm, and in many other ways throughout history there's been way harsher versions of this, you almost get prisoned by debt into living a particular way that kind of benefits maybe the people in power, right? And I think that's definitely in this book as well, where you're working for the windmill, so one day you can work 3 days a week or what have you and have this great life. Maybe one day you pay your house off and you retire, or you live on the beach, or you can buy all those things that are on the television and all that kind of stuff, right? So
it's interesting because
they're linked together, those themes, I think.
It's quite interesting because excusing some of the materiality, and if you've got a very expensive taste in things, like let's exclude that for a sec, and just some of the experience, I really want to travel the world, or I really want to go and do this, but I haven't got time or whatever. There's really nothing, unless, if you're in sort of a younger situation, even in the older situation, unless you've got dependents, there is not much stopping you from going and flexing that.
There's not, but think about if you were living in, say, our grandparents, right? The wars have just finished. There's all these threats. There's snowball on the outside.
Yeah.
You're going to hunker down and you're going to get that house and you're going to make sure you've got a home for your family. And whereas we kind of feel like, well, we'll be right. You know, like we can always sort it out. There'll be a job when I come back. No one's coming over the mountains. You know, you and I are lucky enough to have good education at university. So theoretically, you know, as long as the robots don't take over, there's a snowball, we'll be right. So we don't feel that sense of urgency, or we're higher on the hierarchy of needs probably than they felt like they were. And that external threat, I think, can be like what happens in this book. Yeah,
and it's quite interesting.
Changes your mindset.